The three most beautiful words when you're selling something online are "I'll pay cash." They're a magical incantation that erases the ghosts of 100 lowballers and the tire kickers who ask if you'll deliver a 300-pound appliance to another state for free. But I learned that night that there's a flip side to that coin, a dark incantation that can curdle your blood. The three scariest words are "we're on our way," especially when they're sent at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. My apartment was a chaotic landscape of cardboard boxes and packing tape, the skeletal remains of a life I was about to leave behind. I was moving across the country in less than a week, a stressful, expensive endeavor that had left my nerves frayed and my bank account gasping for air. In the center of my nearly empty kitchen stood the final boss of my moving woes, a massive, stainless steel refrigerator. It was a beautiful, hulking beast I'd bought 2 years ago, thinking it was an investment. Now, it was just an anchor, too big for my new place and too expensive to move. For a week, I'd been battling the denizens of Marketplace. The offers were a joke. "I'll give you $50 and a half-eaten bag of chips. Can you hold it for 3 months while I think about it? Does it come with a lifetime supply of groceries?" I was starting to think I'd have to pay someone just to haul the damn thing away. My asking price was $500, a steal for a model that was still retailing for over $2,000. I was desperate. Then a message popped up. "Hi, is this still available?" It read. The profile picture showed a smiling, friendly-looking woman in her 30s. Her name was Sophia. I replied that it was. Her response came back almost instantly. "Great. I've been looking for this exact model. Would you take $500 cash? I can pick it up tonight." I read the message twice. Full asking price. In cash. It felt like a dream. Every fiber of my being, worn down by stress and desperation, screamed yes. I ignored the little voice in the back of my head that whispered tonight. "It's already 9 p.m. "Tonight works for me," I typed back, my fingers flying. "Just a heads up, it's big. You'll definitely need a truck and at least one other person to help you move it." "No problem at all," she replied, her enthusiasm practically radiating through the screen. "My partner will be with me. We have a truck. We can be there around 11. Another tiny alarm bell went off. 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. It was late. My building was quiet, the halls usually deserted after 10. But the thought of that crisp $500, of finally seeing the back of that refrigerator, was too tempting. I was a practical man, and practicality was telling me to close the deal. The stress of the move had clouded my judgment, making me prioritize convenience over caution. 11 p.m. is fine, I confirmed, sending her my address. The next 2 hours were a blur of last-minute packing and cleaning. I emptied the fridge, wiping down every shelf until it gleamed. I swept the floor, cleared a path to the door, and even measured the doorways again just to be sure. I wanted this to be the smoothest, quickest transaction in the history of second-hand sales. As the clock ticked past 10:30, a nervous energy started to bubble in my stomach. It was just a sale. A simple transaction. People buy and sell things at odd hours all the time, right? I told myself I was just jumpy from the move. At 11:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Sophia. "We're on our way. Be there in 15. The message felt different. The bubbly tone was gone. It was clipped, direct. The three scariest words. I stood by my living room window, peering down at the rain-slicked street 3 floors below. My apartment building is on a quiet, tree-lined road, the kind that feels safe during the day but a little too dark at night. A few minutes later, a beat-up, windowless white van pulled up to the curb. Not a pickup truck, as I'd expected, but a utility van. The kind contractors use, or the kind you see in horror movies. The passenger door opened, and a woman got out. Sophia. Even from a distance, I could see she matched her profile picture. Then the driver's side door opened. A man emerged. He wasn't just tall, he was imposing. Broad-shouldered and thick-set, he moved with a slow, deliberate economy of motion that made the hair on my arms stand up. He didn't look at the building. He just stood by the van, his hands in his pockets, a shadowy figure under the weak glow of the streetlight. My buzzer rang, the harsh sound jolting me from my perch. I took a deep breath, trying to shake the sudden, irrational fear that had taken root in my gut. "It's just a sale, Mason," I told myself. "Get it over with." I pressed the button to unlock the lobby door. "Come on up," I said into the intercom, my voice sounding strained to my own ears. Apartment 3B. I stood in my open doorway, trying to arrange my face into a welcoming, normal cellar expression. The slow hum of the elevator was the only sound in the hallway, each floor it passed marking a countdown to their arrival. When the doors slid open, my first impression from the window was confirmed, and then some. Sophia was all smiles, her bright, almost too wide grin a stark contrast to the dim, sterile lighting of the hallway. "Mason, I am Sophia. It is so great to finally meet you. Thanks so much for being flexible with the time." Her voice was bubbly, energetic, the kind of voice that tries to put you at ease instantly. But it felt practiced, like a script. Behind her, her partner was a wall of silence. He was a big guy, as I'd seen from the window, but up close he was genuinely intimidating. He wore a dark, hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled down, casting his face in shadow. He didn't smile. He didn't make eye contact. He just stared at a point somewhere over my shoulder, his presence filling the doorway and sucking the air out of the room. He carried nothing, no dolly, no moving straps, not even a pair of gloves. "Hey, Sophia, come on in," I said, forcing a smile of my own. I stepped back and they entered my apartment. The man's size seemed to shrink the space immediately. He moved past me with a strange, silent grace for a man so large, his eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. Not the way a guest looks around, but the way a predator assesses its environment. "Wow, this is the place," Sophia chirped, walking directly to the refrigerator. "It's even better in person." She ran a hand over the stainless steel door, but her eyes weren't on the appliance. They were flicking around my kitchen, noting the layout, the windows, the other rooms branching off the main living area. "Yeah, she's been a great fridge," I said, trying to steer the conversation back to the transaction. "So, you guys ready to get this thing out of here?" The man remained silent, standing near the door like a sentry. Sophia turned away from the fridge, her smile unwavering. "Absolutely. We just want to make sure it's the right fit. Do you mind if we take a look around?" It was an odd request. A look around. "Oh, sure," I stammered. "What do you need to see? I've got the measurements here if you need them." "Oh, it's not about the measurements," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's more about the ambience." She laughed, a short, sharp sound that didn't reach her eyes. Her partner's gaze settled on the stack of boxes by the couch, the ones filled with my electronics, my laptop, my gaming console, my sound system. His eyes lingered there for a beat too long. My gut was no longer whispering, it was screaming. They don't have a dolly. They don't have straps. They don't have anything to move a 300-pound refrigerator. This wasn't a pickup, it was a scouting mission. Sophia started to wander through my living room, picking up a framed photo from a box. "Is this your family?" she asked, her tone dripping with manufactured sweetness. "Yeah, that's my sister and her kids," I said, my voice tight. I wanted to tell her to put it down. "That's so sweet. They live nearby?" Every question felt loaded, a probe searching for information. Is he alone? Does he have family close by who might check on him? "No, they're on the West Coast," I answered, the words feeling like a mistake the moment they left my lips. "Stupid Mason. You just told her you're alone." The silent man moved from the doorway and walked towards the hall that led to my bedroom and bathroom. He didn't ask. He just went. "Hey," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "The rest of the apartment is a mess. There's really nothing to see back there." He stopped, turning his head slowly to look at me for the first time. His eyes were flat, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. He didn't say a word, but his message was clear. He would go where he wanted. Sophia quickly stepped in, her bubbly persona back in full force. "Oh, he's just checking the path. You know, making sure we don't scuff up your walls when we move the fridge. He's so considerate." Considerate wasn't the word I would have used. The man gave me one last, lingering look before turning back and rejoining Sophia in the kitchen. The entire exchange took maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I was trapped. I had invited these people into my home. Social etiquette, the ingrained politeness of a normal person, was at war with my primal survival instinct. How do you kick someone out when they haven't technically done anything wrong? Sophia leaned against my kitchen counter right next to the knife block. "So, you're moving out, huh? Big move. Must be a lot of work for one person." There it was again. The emphasis on one person. She wasn't just making small talk. She was confirming her intel. "Yeah, it's a lot," I said, trying to sound casual as I subtly moved to stand between her and the knives. "My roommate, Dave, has been a huge help, but he's out with friends tonight. Should be back any minute, actually." It was a clumsy, transparent lie. Every box was labeled with my name. There was no sign of a second person living in the apartment. Sophia's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a tiny crack in her carefully constructed facade. She knew I was lying, and she knew that I knew what this was really about. The pretense of the sale was dissolving, and the air in the room grew thick and heavy with unspoken threat. They weren't here for my fridge. They were here for my home, and I had just let them in. The lie about my roommate hung in the air, thin and fragile. Sophia's smile returned, but it was different now. It was sharper, predatory. "Oh, a roommate. That's great. It's always good to have a buddy system, isn't it?" she said, her voice laced with a saccharine condescension that made my skin crawl. She was calling my bluff. The silent giant stood with his arms crossed, his impassive gaze fixed on me. He hadn't moved, but his stillness was more menacing than any action. He was a coiled spring, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage, and I was locked inside with the predators. I knew I had to get them out. Now, the game was up. But how? Calling the cops felt like an escalation that could get me killed before they even arrived. Physically confronting them was a suicidal fantasy. The man was easily twice my size, and I had no doubt he was capable of extreme violence. My only weapon was my wit, and right now my brain felt like it was wading through molasses. So I began, my voice trembling slightly. I cleared my throat, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. About the fridge. It's getting pretty late, and like I said, my roommate will be back soon. He's a really light sleeper, so I'd like to get this done. I was doubling down on the lie, hoping it would create a sense of urgency. Sophia tilted her head, a gesture that might have been cute on someone else. On her, it was unnerving. Oh, of course. We wouldn't want to wake Dave, she said, savoring the fake name. But here's the thing, Mason. We have a problem. She walked over to the refrigerator and opened the freezer door, peering inside as if she were genuinely inspecting it. My partner here, she said, gesturing to the silent man without looking at him. He hurt his back at work today. A pretty bad sprain. I don't think he's going to be able to lift anything this heavy tonight. My blood ran cold. It was the perfect excuse. The perfect, calculated move to prolong their stay. They weren't backing out of the deal, they were just delayed. Oh, okay, I managed to say. Well, that's too bad. I guess we can reschedule for another time, then. My heart leaped at the possibility. Just leave. Please, just leave. Sophia closed the freezer door with a soft click. She turned to face me, her expression a mask of faux disappointment. Well, we could, but we drove all the way out here. And we have the cash right here. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. I could see the edges of the bills. The bait. It seems like a shame to have wasted the trip. Maybe we could just wait a little while, see if his back feels better. Wait for what? For my imaginary roommate to not show up, for me to let my guard down, for the building to fall completely silent so no one would hear me scream. My mind was racing, cycling through a Rolodex of bad options. My phone was on the counter, just a few feet away, but they were between me and the door. Every exit was blocked. The social contract was the only thing keeping the situation from exploding, and it was shredding by the second. I had to play along, but I had to end the game. You know what, I said, a desperate idea forming in my mind. It was risky, but it was better than just standing here, waiting for them to make their move. I think I know what the problem is. This fridge is a real beast. I had a tough time getting it in here myself. You probably need a proper dolly, one of those big appliance ones. I started walking towards the hall closet, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I think my neighbor down the hall has one. He's an old guy, probably asleep, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I borrowed it. Let me just go knock on his door. I'll be right back. It was a bluff, a gamble. I was trying to introduce an unknown element, another person, into their calculation. I was signaling that I wasn't isolated, that there were other people nearby who would notice if something was wrong. Sophia's smile vanished completely. For the first time, her mask of bubbly charm fell away, revealing the cold, hard predator beneath. I don't think you should do that, she said, her voice dropping an octave, losing all its manufactured warmth. It was a command, not a suggestion. The silent man took a single, deliberate step forward, closing the distance between us. He was blocking my path to the closet, to the hallway, to any potential escape. The unspoken threat had finally been spoken. They weren't going to let me leave. The tension in the room snapped, stretched to its absolute breaking point. I was at my lowest point, cornered and out of options. The fake transaction was over. The real home invasion was about to begin. My bluff had been called. The shift in the atmosphere was instantaneous and terrifying. The flimsy pretense of a late-night sale had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, stark reality. I was trapped in my own apartment with two people who clearly had violent intentions. Sophia's face was a stony mask, her eyes narrowed. The big guy was a statue of menace, a physical barrier between me and any hope of escape. The air was thick with what was coming next. My brain, which had been a fog of panic, suddenly snapped into crystal clear focus. It was the kind of clarity that only comes when your life is on the line. I had one last card to play. It was a wild, desperate Hail Mary, but it was all I had left. I held up my hands in a placating gesture, forcing a nervous, apologetic laugh. "Whoa, okay, no problem," I said, trying to make my voice sound shaky and subservient. "You're right, it's too late to bother my neighbors. Bad idea. Sorry." I backed away from the man, moving deeper into the apartment, towards the living room, away from the door. This was crucial. I needed to create distance. "Look," I continued, wringing my hands to sell the act. "I get it. His back hurts. You don't want to move a fridge. To be honest, I really need this thing done tonight. The cash would be a huge help." I gestured towards the envelope in Sophia's hand. I had to make them believe I was still focused on the money, that I was still the gullible, desperate seller. Sophia exchanged a look with her partner. I had their attention. They thought they had me cowed, that I was falling back into the role of the victim. "Here's what I'm thinking," I said, my voice gaining a bit of false confidence. "Forget my neighbor. Let's just call my cousin. He lives like 10 minutes from here. He's a beast, strong as an ox. He and I can have this thing in your van in no time. You guys wouldn't have to lift a finger. You can just supervise." I pulled my phone from my pocket before they could object. Their expressions shifted from predatory certainty to confusion. This was a new variable they hadn't anticipated. Another man, a beast, arriving in minutes. "I'll just call him right now," I said, unlocking my phone and navigating to my contacts. My thumb hovered over my best friend's name, Dave. It wasn't the lie they thought it was. My friend Dave was real, and he did live nearby. But he wasn't expecting my call. Sophia held up a hand. "Wait, we don't want to put your cousin out." No, it's no trouble at all," I insisted, my voice a pitch too high with manufactured enthusiasm. "He owes me a favor anyway. He'll be happy to help. His name is Sergeant Miller. Well, he's my cousin, but he's also a cop. Works the night shift over at the precinct just downtown. He's probably just finishing up his shift now. Perfect timing." I said the word cop with as much casual emphasis as I could muster. I watched their faces. It was like watching a switch flip. The silent man's eyes, which had been flat and dead, suddenly flickered with something new. Caution. Sophia's face, which had been a mask of cold control, now showed a flicker of uncertainty. A cop. A cop who was a family member. A cop who would be arriving at my apartment in 10 minutes. Their perfect, isolated victim was suddenly not so isolated anymore. They had been casing a cop's cousin. I didn't wait for their response. I hit the call button for Dave and put the phone to my ear. "Hey, Mike, it's Mason," I said loudly, using a fake name for my cousin. "Yeah, Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, I need that favor you owe me. The one from last week. Yeah, I need your help moving a fridge. No, right now. Great. Yeah, the address is the same. Apartment 3B. Awesome. See you in 10. And hey, bring your gloves. This thing is heavy. I hung up, a triumphant finality in the gesture. I looked at them and gave them my most accommodating smile. He's on his way, I said. He said he's looking forward to meeting you. The silence that followed was deafening. The two of them stood frozen for a moment, their internal calculus whirring. The risk of the situation had just skyrocketed. Before, it was their word against mine. Now, they were facing the imminent arrival of a police officer. A robbery or a home invasion was no longer a simple matter. It was a direct confrontation with law enforcement. Sophia was the first to break. The bubbly mask was gone, replaced by a thin, brittle smile that didn't come close to her eyes. "You know what, Mason," she said, her voice strained. "My partner's back is really starting to bother him. I think we should probably just go. We can come back another time." "Are you sure?" I asked, feigning disappointment. "My cousin is already on his way." "No, it's for the best," she said quickly, already backing towards the door. She didn't even glance at the refrigerator. The silent man followed her, his intimidating presence now looking more like a hasty retreat. He didn't look at me as he walked past, but I could feel the anger and frustration rolling off him in waves. "Okay," I said, walking them to the door. "Well, let me know when you want to reschedule." Sophia didn't answer. She was already out in the hallway, the man right behind her. I closed the door, my hand shaking as I threw the deadbolt. The click echoed in the silent apartment, the loudest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, my legs feeling like they were about to give out. I listened as their footsteps retreated down the hall, followed by the ding of the elevator. I stayed there, not moving, until I heard the faint sound of the van's engine starting and then fading into the distance. Only then did I slide down the door and sit on the floor, the adrenaline leaving my body in a dizzying rush. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from the real Dave. "Dude, did you just but dial me? What's a Sergeant Mike?" I spent the rest of the night with every light in the apartment on, sitting on my couch and staring at the refrigerator. It was no longer just an appliance. It was a monument to the stupidest decision I had ever made. The next morning, I called a junk removal service and paid two guys $150 to haul it away. It was the best money I ever spent. I never heard from Sophia again. I never got my full asking price. But I was alive. And sometimes that's a deal you have to be willing to take. You tell me, was I just paranoid, or did I narrowly escape something truly terrible? I think I know the answer, and it keeps me up at night. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.